been wonderful. It's been a lot of ups and a lot of downs.
We can tell you that Ozzy will be making one more final journey through his beloved Birmingham.
That final journey begins at 1 p.m. in Ozzy's hometown.
Ozzy Osbourne spent half a century making the loudest moments in rock feel personal. It turns out his last months were just as carefully planned as any world tour. After doctors said he should rest, he booked one more hometown show, steered millions to charity, posted a single spooky photo, and then left the stage for good. What followed, his private funeral, looked less like a service and more like one last concert that he storyboarded himself. Nothing felt random. Every flower, every song, every guest seemed to land on its mark, right on cue. Tonight, instead of listing facts and dates, let's walk through that farewell in slow motion, section by section, so you can see how the man who once bragged he could never be tamed still found a way to direct the ending.
I've been in a miserable, with this injury I had in my neck. It's been really miserable for me, you know, because I mean, when you go for a rehab surgery, you don't think the doctors are going to screw it up, you know. And you got to live with it, you know.
Before daylight even touched the trees, cars started parking in the muddy grass along the lane that leads to the Osbourne estate. Fans carried camping chairs, flasks of tea, and dog-eared vinyl sleeves they hoped to hold up just once more. Some people whispered old tour stories, like the time Ozzy walked off stage in Milton Keynes and gave away his coat, while others stood quiet, lost in their own memories. As more headlights appeared, the crowd began to build a shrine against the tall black gates. First came the flowers, mostly deep purple roses to match Ozzy's famous glasses.
It's Ozzy's last encore. 10,000 grieving fans lined the streets of Birmingham, England as Ozzy Osbourne's casket went by. Inside the hearse, a purple floral arrangement spelling out the legend's name. A sea of flowers, balloons, and pictures flooded the streets of his hometown, touching tributes from so many admirers.
Then someone looped a leather belt into the shape of a bat and hung it from a spike. By 5 a.m., the iron bars were a collage of candles, ticket stubs, and scrawled letters that started with "Dear Oz" and ended with "Thank you." Even the local police, posted to keep order, left a small bouquet under a handwritten sign. Prince of Darkness, King of Hearts. The hush that settled over those gathered felt almost heavier than grief. People spoke in soft tones, as if any sudden noise might break the spell.
A regular guy. He never lost sight of who he was.
The rock icon was reportedly buried here at his historic estate outside London. That appears to be the same floral tribute that accompanied Ozzy's casket during yesterday's procession. And there, near the property's lake, his gravesite.
When Sharon's SUV rolled into view just after sunrise, phones rose like lanterns, but no one cheered. Sharon stepped out and laid a single purple rose beneath a framed photo of Ozzy, flashing his two-finger salute. Kelly, slipping on her dad's tinted specs, kissed 2 fingers and pressed them to the glass. Jack followed, clutching a pewter urn so tightly his knuckles looked chalk white. A brass quartet by the driveway bravely tried the opening line of Mr. Crowley, but emotion made a few notes crack. Nobody minded. The crowd answered with the only tribute that seemed proper: complete silence. Inside the gates, the estate's driveway turned into a rolling backstage corridor.
My wife and I work as a team. She works harder than I do, you know.
You do become a soulmate.
Grief-stricken Sharon broke down in tears. With Kelly and Jack at her side, the frail-looking 72-year-old made her way to this massive impromptu shrine.
First to arrive was Elton John, who hugged Sharon for a full minute before stepping aside. The red pin on his lapel, a tiny bat cut from velvet, winked under the weak sun. Seconds later, Paul McCartney walked up with the easy calm of someone who has said too many goodbyes but still believes in music more than sadness. He squeezed Sharon's hand twice, a private code they both seemed to understand. Then came the hard rock contingent: Axl Rose, Leather Jacket, older than many fans in the road, kept his head down, maybe to hide tears or maybe to stay inside his own thoughts. Slash followed, guitar slung over one shoulder even though he had no intention of playing it.
His body will travel by hearse, eventually heading here to Birmingham's Black Sabbath Bridge, where thousands of fans have already paid their respects.
I think coming back to play the city just a couple of weeks ago before he passed on, it's kind of testament to how much of the city was in him.
He tapped the coffin once, as if checking a stage monitor before a gig. Lady Gaga, wrapped in a veil that trailed like smoke, linked arms with Dave Grohl. Together they shuffled forward, whispering about keeping it together before they reached the family. Hollywood arrived next. Johnny Depp, sunglasses hiding red eyes. Robert Downey Jr., all sharp lines and quiet nods. Marilyn Manson, looking smaller than his stage persona ever allowed. A slight buzz swept through the crowd when Rami Malek and Jared Leto, both men who have played rock icons on screen, showed up side by side.
I just get hammered all the time. Yeah. And now, I mean, I'm nearly a year without now, which is, I'm coming away and I'm going, there are people here, you know.
But nothing stirred people like the sight of Mick Jagger and Keith Richards stepping out of the same car. You could almost feel a camera flash of history, the Stones tipping their hats to the man who once pushed rock's bad boy image even further. Helicopters circled above, but the engines seemed to drop in volume, almost as if the pilots, too, knew they were flying over sacred ground. The main chapel sat at the end of a gravel path lined with guttering candles and wet petals. Sharon took that walk with her children, each step crunching on stones that had been raked smooth only hours earlier.
But I'm better than I was. I had to have 2 more surgeries to put right where he done. I don't think I'll ever walk properly again, but I'm trying my hardest to get up.
Kelly's borrowed glasses fogged in the drizzle, so Jack reached over and wiped them on his sleeve, revealing a brief smile between siblings. Behind them came extended family, bandmates from different eras, and road crew whose tour scars told longer stories than any biography. Inside, the chapel was lit mostly by wax and stained glass blues and reds. Giant lilies, white orchids, and long-stemmed roses climbed metal stands like vines. In front of the altar stood a mahogany coffin draped in black silk. A silver bat, no larger than an open hand, glimmered in its center. The front pew held a glass case with Ozzy's dented harmonica and a notebook page titled Set List, Aston Rehearsal Shed, the pencil writing still dark after 50-plus years. Someone had pinned an old backstage pass beside it, the string frayed, the laminate cracked. As the family took their seats, a string quartet slid from the spooky intro of Diary of a Madman into a slow-burn version of Goodbye to Romance. The shift tugged at heartstrings. A few voices in the back rows hummed along before drifting into quiet tears. Each guest lowered their head, not by rule but by reflex, the way you automatically turn down music in your car when lost in a new city. Even seasoned tour managers, men and women used to solving chaos in a blink, found themselves stuck in place, staring at the silver bat while memories played like highlight reels behind their eyelids. The gospel choir stood in 2 tidy rows, black robes brushing polished floorboards. The first notes of "Mama, I'm Coming Home" floated out with no instruments behind them, just layered voices rising like warm air. The song filled every corner of the chapel up to the timber rafters and back down across bowed heads.
His wife Sharon clung to a tissue as tears flowed down her face. She was comforted by her children.
Ozzy! Ozzy! Ozzy!
Keith Richards pinched the bridge of his nose and wiped away moisture no one dared to call tears. Lady Gaga clutched Dave Grohl's sleeve with fingers that shook. When the choir's last chord faded into the stone walls, the lights dimmed and 4 wooden chairs waited in the glow of a single spotlight. James Hetfield sat first, guitar balanced on his knee. Dave Grohl, Zakk Wylde, and Eric Clapton followed, nodding to one another like ball players passing the bat. Hetfield plucked the opening pattern of No More Tears, a tune fans knew for its swirling solos now stripped to bare bones. Grohl's harmony line came in under the words, softer than he sings with the Foo Fighters. Wild added gentle pinched notes, careful not to overpower. Clapton's break was almost whispered, a few bent notes that hung in the air like incense. Behind them, a video screen flickered to life. Grainy phone footage showed Ozzy messing around in his kitchen, banging a spoon on a pot lid while a grandchild laughed. Another clip showed him in a hotel hallway pretending to ride a luggage cart like a skateboard. The final video landed hard. Ozzy barefoot in the backyard, holding Sharon's hand and turning to the camera to say, "This is the life, man." When Hetfield hit the final chord, a pre-recorded line of Ozzy's voice rolled through the speakers. "Feels like I've lived 3 lives, but I'd do it all again tomorrow." A wave of sobs swept the room, but through it you could hear soft applause, people thanking the performers for giving them a way to let go. Sir Anthony Hopkins stepped to the lectern. No notes except a folded page he tucked into a pocket after one glance. His voice began low and steady, almost conversational, as he talked about first hearing Black Sabbath on a cheap transistor radio, the way the riff in Paranoid seemed to grab him by the collar.
The service, which Ozzy requested be a celebration, lasted for about 3 hours. More than 100 people attended, including fellow rockers Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson. Also reportedly there, longtime friend Elton John.
He spoke about Ozzy as a living example that music could out-yell fear and outrun shame. Mid-speech, he paused, looked straight at Sharon and said he had one mission: make noise louder than pain. Sharon nodded, lips pressed tight, eyes shining. Hopkins finished by asking everyone not to mourn in silence but to crank whatever record made them fall in love with music in the first place. He never wanted silence, he said. Silence bored him. The chapel sat frozen for one long heartbeat, then applause burst up like a flash fire. First the family, then the friends, then the stars in the back rows, and finally the service staff. Every person on their feet, clapping, some stomping. The sound bounced off stone and wood, roaring back on itself until it felt like a small concert. It lasted nearly a minute before fading into soft laughter and waves of tears, exactly the mix Ozzy always seemed to spark. Past the chapel doors, a glass pavilion waited, where every display case told a story. One table held 3 smashed SGs, each tagged with city, venue, and date. Cleveland 74, Tokyo 82, Buenos Aires 95. Another case displayed scribbled lyric sheets for Crazy Train, lines scratched out and rewritten until the paper looked like a school kid's spelling test. At the room's center hung Ozzy's first stage jacket, smooth leather turned brittle over decades. Seams stitched and restitched by wardrobe techs now retired. Overhead speakers played raw studio chatter, Ozzy missing an entry, joking, "I'm half a beat behind my own brain," and then nailing the next take.
Ozzy's family also honored the icon yesterday with touching symbols. Sharon, his wife of 43 years, wore his wedding ring on a chain.
It just becomes a different love.
Daughter Kelly wore her dad's round purple-tinted glasses. His son Jack's tie had a silver cross on it, which were often part of Ozzy's look.
Road-worn flight cases served as cocktail tables, but instead of booze, servers offered heavy mugs of coffee and big teapots. Ozzy had been sober for many years, and Sharon wanted the room to feel true to that chapter of his life. Before guests left, an attendant handed each a tiny vial containing dark soil from Aston, the Birmingham neighborhood where Ozzy first wrote his name on a chalkboard guitar. The glass tube felt warm from the attendant's hand. The cork was stamped in plain type, still rooted, still roaring. Many guests tucked it into their jacket pocket like a good luck charm they didn't want to lose. Night settled over the estate, turning the walled garden into a quiet maze of candlelight. In the middle stood the iron bat, wings spread, talons hooked over a slab carved with the Black Sabbath logo. Hundreds of candles, set out by staff earlier, now flickered with each gust of wind, throwing moving shadows that made the sculpture look alive. The choir returned, cloaks pulled tight against the cold, and began singing Changes, so softly it sounded like a lullaby. Guests drifted down the pathways 2 by 2, bending to place a candle at the bat's feet. Some whispered prayers, others muttered song lyrics. A few just laid their palms on the iron surface as if hoping it might still be warm. Sharon stepped forward last with a long lighter. Kelly and Jack stood on either side of her. She reached up and lit the flame, housed in a glass box behind the bat's chest. A bright orange tongue shot upward, reflecting in tear-glossed eyes all around. Nobody pulled out a phone. Nobody spoke. The moment stretched so long that time felt wobbly, like a record slowing to half speed. Even the wind seemed careful, sliding through the hedges rather than pushing them apart. By dawn, word of the ceremony had flashed across continents. In London, the Shard dimmed its top floors to a deep blood-red glow.
His son Louis from his first marriage wore a purple tie with skulls, and rarely seen daughter Amy wore a bat brooch.
All I did was go out there and make a mistake of biting a head off a bat.
In New York, the Empire State Building switched its lights to the same color. Radio hosts ripped up their playlists and played Ozzy, Sabbath, and every cover version they could find for 12 straight hours. On the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles, bars that once fought over who booked Ozzy first joined forces. They placed battery candles on every table, turned off the neon signs, and let local bands play Sabbath songs unplugged. A lone guitarist in Tokyo Station slowed Crazy Train until commuters could hum along in time with their own footsteps. Social media filled with black squares captioned only, "Play it loud." Tattoo shops opened early to ink tiny bat wings on wrists and collarbones. Designers shared never-before-seen photos of Ozzy's stage boots, vowing profits from new runs would go to Parkinson's research and children's hospitals, mirroring the nearly $200 million donation Ozzy had arranged before his death. Even religious leaders found space for him. A Brooklyn rabbi quoted Dreamer during Shabbat. An Irish priest ended Mass by playing the same song through the church speakers. A monk in Bangkok led a meditation class accompanied by a gentle instrumental of Iron Man, explaining that the rumble of the riff could make the mind focus on the present moment. Back in Buckinghamshire, fans stayed outside the gates all night, wrapped in blankets against the summer chill. Some sang bits of Paranoid, some swapped stories about first concerts, some just stared at the iron bat glowing in the distance, waiting for the sky to lighten. A retired roadie, leaning on a cane and speaking to nobody in particular, said, "He didn't turn down the amp, he just stepped away from the mic and let us finish the set." Judging by the candles, the posts, and the hushed choruses still drifting across the lawns at sunrise, the set isn't over, and might never be,